This is a short bite episode of Homeschool Together. Hello, game schoolers out there. Thanks for joining us. This is Homeschool Together. This is not just one of our short bites that last about 10, 12 minutes where I'm putting an interview with the game creator at the end of this podcast. So if you are interested in this game, if you're interested in the creator or the ideas on how to create these type of games, we did an interview with him. And if you're interested in it, stay to the end, past the credits, and you'll get to hear that interview.
Yeah, our interview with Benny Sperling.
Benny
who
Sperling
created this game, Wild West.
Wiki, Wild West. No.
So,
Old school 90s, bad Will Smith movies. No.
So Benny has been creating print and play games for a number of years. They have...
What's a print and play?
Yeah, a print and play is basically a game that...
allows you to save $50?
Yeah, that you either get for free or is low cost. In this case, this is a $3 game, so it's $3. You get the digital files, and then you can print them. So in this case,
It's basically the size of like a piece of paper, right?
Right. So you've got a set of rules that are 8.5 by 11, and then some play sheets. Now you can print them however you want. We've done several things. We've printed them at home and then laminated them. I think these ones we printed at like UPS.
Or the library.
The UPS store. Well, I wanted them printed on cardstock, so I think I printed them at the UPS store. I think it cost me like $2.50 to have 4 sheets printed. And then I laminated them at home with my Scotch laminator, which if you don't have one, look down the show notes. We'll include a link because they're fabulous. We love ours. So the whole thing about print and play games, and Benny did a great job talking about this if you listen on to his terrific interview, is just how accessible it is for everyone to play, right? As you kind of alluded to the $50 game. There are some games out there, I'm looking at you, Trek in the World.
Or Twilight Imperium.
Well, well, that one's big. But I mean, specifically
yeah.
for game schoolers, there's games like Trekking the World or Parks that are just, they look gorgeous, but man, are they pricey. And it's difficult for us to, especially game schoolers, I want to try to have games that fit all the different things we want to learn about. I want to have games about different areas of time, about different science subjects.
And there's not a game that's like a curriculum in and of itself. Games are always, they have various aspects that they key in
they
on.
They have a theme, and then they have mechanics. So
we can teach with those, but it's not comprehensive, and so we always have to leverage multiple games, and then all of a sudden the price begins to grow.
The price and the shelf space. I mean, let's face that, right? So there's kind of two problems. So you've got the game theme and the game mechanics. So the theme and the information that's presented right through cards and different things in the game can help teach concepts. And then you also have mechanics where you're talking about like math and logic, strategy, and some of that other stuff. So you've got those pieces. And yeah, like you say, nothing covers everything, right? So yeah, we have to have all these different games. Print and play is incredibly affordable and accessible for all kinds of people and super portable. So the game that we're talking about today, Wild West, is a game that Benny created, and it is highly portable. We've actually taken it on 3 vacations now, or two vacations where we just packed it in a folder.
We took it on our most important vacation, the one we just had, where we didn't have a child, and it was the first vacation where we didn't have a child for 6 years.
Right, and we took it with us.
We brought it with us, and we played it at the bars and the restaurants and everything.
Yeah, we went to Lake Chelan here in Washington State. It was beautiful. As we sat in the brew pub there, we played our, umpteenth game of Wild West. So let's get into it. Wild West is a game is a roll and write game. So if you have any experience with roll and writes, you're going to roll some number of dice and then take actions based on those dice. In this game, you're going to roll 4 dice. You're going to take 1 die is going to decide what area of a 6-shooter, a 6-shooter board on your sheet you're going to play into. The next die is going to determine what you play in that sector.
The specific value, sometimes just the fact that it achieves a certain criteria, whether it's less than 3 or greater than 3,
right,
or even or odd.
That second die is what goes in the sector. And then the third die is something bad that happens. And I think the rules call it the bad stuff. We call it the calamities.
Calamities.
So
yeah.
So the board, the sheet that you get is basically, it's got a 6-shooter in the center with the numbers 1 through 6, and then for each sector does a different thing.
Of the chambers represents one of the regions you can play into.
Right. So you've got the sheriff, you've got the judge, and
the town, the cattle rancher, the saloon,
the varmints, the
yeah.
train. So each of the areas, there's something different going on. So this is terrific if you're doing any kind of early American or Wild West type study. It's just, the theme is great. And then you're making these very smart decisions with the dice. So the person that rolls the die gets to select which ones they're going to
select one dice.
Select
that's
one
just
dice
theirs.
that's just theirs of what sector they're going to play into, and then the other dice.
Yeah, the rest of the individuals in the game then select their choices from the remaining 3 dice.
Right.
Yes.
So you as the player, that turn, you get the best choice, and everybody else has to kind of deal with what's left. And so your 3 die is going to decide what sector you play in, what gets played in that sector, and then where the calamity occurs. And so each sector has its own different calamities, and
a lot of times
as you build them up,
yeah,
then worse and worse
happen.
things happen to you.
Yeah, and those bad things don't necessarily happen on that area of the board. Sometimes they happen on the other side of the board.
Right.
And so you may be trying to achieve something over here on one side, like on the number 2 section, and you use up too many calamities in the number 4 section, and that causes you to lose points on that one that you've been working towards. So it's a really great game. It really allows that kind of abstract thinking of managing your goals and what you're trying to achieve. And then the game has a dynamic where it's purposely trying to injure you and hurt you and take away things that you're doing. I think the varmints are a great example of that, where you spend the whole time getting the varmints, and then all of a sudden, boom, more varmints arrive.
Right. So the number 1 sector has got these 3 different kinds of varmints. I think it's like
a snake. Let's say a snake, like a panther.
Well, it's not a panther. It must be like a bobcat or
a coyote, a snake, and a bobcat.
Okay. So each one of them, like, in order to eradicate the snake, you need
like a 3
and a 4, for example, and the other ones it's a 1 and a 6 or a 2 and a 5 or whatever. And so once you've played those dice into that sector, you've eliminated that varmint. When you eliminate all the varmints, you close the sector. Well, except down where the judge is at, if you get too many calamities there, it's going to add a varmint.
Yeah, right.
And so then it reopens your sector that you had managed to close.
And the goal is to close 3 sectors. Four sectors in the game. So once 4 sectors, either through you have no ability to play into that sector again, that closes it. Whether you have, I think, used up all your calamities as well, that closes a sector.
Yeah, that closes a sector.
That closes a sector as well. So it's not necessarily that you've achieved everything on that sector. It could just be, closed down due to, the fact that the game is hurting you in a certain direction.
So all the sectors have different modes of play. So like the varmints, you're trying to get certain numbers so that you can eliminate varmints. The cattle ranch, you have to get numbers in numerical order, but not necessarily sequential order.
Yeah.
Or is that the right way to say it?
Yeah. It's like you can get a 1, 3, 5, 6.
Right.
Has to be in order, not in sequence. Like
right. So that was right. I said that. Yeah. Okay. So there's that. There's the judge. So you're going to go ahead and get a warrant for somebody, and then in a different sector at the sheriff, you have to locate
capture them,
and then capture them, and then go back to the judge
and put them in jail.
So you've got different sectors where you want different
playing
numbers
off each other.
So okay, I rolled an even number. Hey, that gets me 1 warrant, and then I go over to the sheriff, and if I do an even, that will find that one. So evens or odds or higher than less than. So however the dice are, there's one that's train cars, and so that one you have to play even odd. There's the saloon where you have to buy the whiskey for
the lowest value.
Buy low and sell high.
Yeah. So it actually has 2 numbers. So you say like you rolled some numbers and you could pick a 5 that gets you into the saloon, and then you have a 1 crate. I'm going to put that as a 1 because I bought low.
Right. Bought the
and
whiskey
then I'm going
at 1.
And then I'm going to apply my calamity somewhere else.
And wait to get a 6 so you can sell that at a 6.
So then the next time it comes around, if I roll a 5, I'm in the saloon. And then I have a 6 that has been rolled. I go, great, I'm going to apply that 6 to my whiskey bottle. So I have a 1 and a 6. And why that matters is that the difference between those numbers is how you score that section.
Right. So every sector has a different score value. So maybe it's a little complex when we're talking about it here, but just so you know,
the funny
everything
thing is we looked at it at first and we're like, wow, this is really complex.
Right.
The first 3 or 4 rolls, you totally get how to play the game.
It's
actually
totally,
it's a very elegant game mechanic.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you play it once, you want to play it again because
right.
it plays fast and you want to try different theories. You want to try focusing on different sections.
Right, because you can't close every sector.
No.
Because some of them you'll end up not being able to do. And so you're trying to do whichever ones get you the most points. So you've got one sheet, one 8.5 by 11 sheet, which has all the 6 sectors that you're playing into. And it has the scoring on the left-hand side. Everything's on one sheet.
One sheet.
So it may sound a little bit complex, but everything is written for you on this sheet, so you know. And it's got great artwork. So it's kind of this light brown, and it has
kind of there's shadow images behind all 6 regions,
of
like
guns and horses,
yeah, jails and like whiskey bottles and barrels, and then
it's
I think
just really great theme.
The artwork and Benny went into it that, you know, he has a really great artist who's been doing this artwork for him, and you know, the work that goes into this is actually very, very, like, it's very impressive.
It's such high quality.
Yeah.
We Kickstarter backed this for $3. I mean, and
well, talk about like Benny's funding mechanism and how
Right.
some of these games are being funded, like through the Kickstarter process.
Kickstarter is really great because it's a way to get creators kind of money up front. It's also a way, let's say that that this creator wanted to make this game and just put it out on his website, and he's going to sell it for $3. Obviously, he doesn't need capital because he's not doing tooling, and he doesn't have to do a big run of boxes to get printed and things like that, you know, a physical game would have. But he still wants to get the message out there that this game exists, right? If he just puts it on his website, how does that go anywhere? Kickstarter is a great way to let everybody know, hey, I've got this really cool new game. And they apparently have, he and his partner, Derik Duley, have a ton of games that they've done over the past, I don't know if it was decade or more.
So, yeah.
And they're slowly going to roll them out on Kickstarter. So check out the show notes and you'll find a link where you can purchase this game, and keep an eye on Kickstarter. We've already played another one of their games that was also really fun, and they had just another train game recently. So I think their plan is every other month or something. They're going to be rolling out a new game. I love how easy this is to get, how low cost. It fits a theme. I would
it's
love to see.
Extremely portable. I mean, it's just a sheet of paper.
It's a sheet of paper and 4 dice. That's all you need.
4 dice and like some grease markers if you laminate it. If
right,
not, you just need a pencil or a pen.
Yeah, that's right. We laminated it because then we could just play it over and over. We just put these in a simple plastic folder, and so we keep all of our print and plays there together when we're going to go somewhere. I've got a pack of 6 dice in there, and I have several different print plays. We can just take them with us. They're perfect to take to a restaurant. I love taking these kind because they're wipe off. So I don't have to worry about taking my expensive games to restaurants or the beach or on a boat or, you know, anywhere where you could get them dirty or wet. Like, this is just such an easy way to do it. And I also, sometimes if you worry, like if you're going to be taking a plane trip or anything like that, you worry about not wanting to take your nice games with you. This is great because you don't have to worry. You have the digital files. You can always reprint it.
And there are a lot of print and play games that are solo games where they have modifications and rules so that if you say you're alone on an airplane, you're like, I don't want to stare at my phone for 8 hours while I fly to Germany. Not like I've ever been there before. You know, you can pull out a sheet, start playing, roll some dice in your hat and play a game. And you don't actually have to, you know, have 4 or 5 people sitting around. Now, it's great if you have 4 or 5 people sitting around because you can all lament your calamities. But, you know, it's something you can do alone as well if you're just trying to pass some time.
Right. I think what's cool about these games, as you say, they often have solo variants. On the other side, they don't have limits to the numbers of players, as many as you could print.
There's a bunch of, the roll and writes have gotten really popular.
You see them they were doing them at like conventions and things. They have 100 people playing the same roll and write.
Yeah, we have a few games where the games are like 1 to 99.
And they say 99 because it comes
plus,
with 99 sheets. And so that's why there's only, but these literally, if you take games into any other kind of settings where you've got like a big, family reunion gatherings, or, when we're allowed to have big gatherings. Again, I know that's not really a thing. These also would work terrific if you wanted to play them
in schools, co-ops,
online. Like if you
Yes.
wanted to do this via Zoom, because all you have to do is have a set of dice that are rolled,
Exactly, that's a
and
great point.
one person picks, and then
Yeah, not
everyone
everybody
has
has
their
to
own
own
sheet.
the $50 game in order to play. You can just play over Zoom.
Right. Yeah, this would be a great way to do this. If you get a couple of you to purchase the game. Like I said, at $3, we want to support the creators that do this. So if you want to play this with your friends and family, each of you buy
and
it.
it's not
and print it.
$3 to print one copy. You get the
get the file.
and you can print as many as you want. So for me, that's such a great deal. And like kind of going back to the point you brought up earlier about buying all these games because we're game schooling and you're trying to slot in, where am I going to spend this $50 and I'm going to spend this $50 and spend this $50. Oh, I got a deal. This one's only $39. A lot of times we want to slot in games that may achieve some other goals, but we can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
These type of games can do that. And there are, not just Benny, but there's a ton of people who are creating roll and writes. There's a lot of roll and writes available.
Well, and a
online.
lot of print and plays, and not all print and plays are roll and writes necessarily.
And not all print and plays are equal. Like
that's
Wild
absolutely
Wild
true.
West is a very good game. It's been play
This
tested.
is top notch. Yeah.
It has a great mechanic. The rules are well balanced. That's one of the problems you can get with these type of indie, print and play type of games where the rules will be a little lopsided, and you'll play it and you'll go, I don't know if I like that. We've had that issue with a print and play that we had with the Quicks variation, Jurassico, where there were a couple elements in the Jurassico print and play that used the same dice and the same features of the Quicks game that was a little overpowered in certain areas or a little underpowered in certain areas. And those are some issues, but this game has been really play tested and found to be very balanced.
It is very balanced.
You don't have everyone going for the cattle because the cattle is just overweight. Benny's done a really good job at balancing the rules, which is where all the $50 games go, right? Those $50 games that you buy have been play tested. The rules are balanced. The outcomes are balanced. The strategies are balanced. There's not going to be just some dude who's winning it every single time because he buys resource cards, in Catan all day long. You have to play the game. And, with this game, which goes to your other point that you always like about games, which is there's a great amount of luck involved. This is not a game that somebody who's a super strategist is just going to win every single game. Because
dice.
It still depends on what
Luck
dice.
of the dice.
Yeah, not only what dice are rolled, but the person who's rolling the dice gets to take one of the dice. So, that perfect roll might have just come up, but he takes the 3 and you can't play the 3.
Right.
And so that there's a great leveling aspect there as well built into the mechanics. So again, this game is well balanced and not all print and plays are. And that's, something we've seen in the past.
But what I love about it is the low cost of print and plays.
Absolutely.
Many of them are free. Some of them are low cost like this one. Means that I don't have to really think all that much about investing in this and supporting these creators. And some games may be amazing like this one. Other games,
a cup of Starbucks is more expensive than this game.
Right. Other games
give a cup of coffee to Benny.
That's right. Other games this game is super well balanced and really superb. Other games that you find from another creator might be less or, whatever. It's such a low cost entry. I love to support these folks that are creating these games. They are pushing the boundaries of what you can do with a print and play and trying to do new things that we haven't seen before, which is fantastic.
We've played print and plays a long time. I think 10 years ago we were doing print and plays off of Board Game Geek. And, this is in a different level.
Totally.
The level that some of these guys are bringing their print and plays up to is just very impressive. Like, you take this game, you expand the mechanics, you give some cool, little tokens and whatnot. Boom, it's a $30 game in a box. And I really can see that. I mean, I could see that happen. Expand this just a tad, same mechanics. So you're getting that type of quality and that playability in, obviously you said it, just a game that you can print. It's amazing.
Right. I think print and plays are terrific. I think Kickstarter is a great way to get the word out for them. These guys release their games under Roll and Write Revolution, so you'll see that on Kickstarter. And if you follow them, I think that we can expect great things from them.
Yes.
Because if this game is any indication of the kind of games that they have been working on and have in their
we
catalog.
played the space one, and it was a lot of fun as well.
Right. Yeah. They came out with another one called Dice Trucking that we played, and we really enjoyed that one too. It was just different, and I don't want to get into trying to explain another one right now, but it was also really good. So anyway, support these creators. They're doing a fantastic job. If you're studying anything about the Old West or early America, this would be a great game to play. It teaches there's lots of logic and strategy, and a healthy bit of luck. And it's a good conversation starter about the things that would drive an Old West town, right? The driving forces behind it. And so I think it's a great game. I really love it. We've played it ourselves. We played it with our game group. We played it with your mom. We took it on vacation. This is a game that we'll just keep in our stash of great travel games, and can't wait to play this with our daughter when she's a little bit older and she's studying early America.
Yeah, age range probably 8 and above, maybe just a little bit above that.
Yeah, I would say probably 8 and up for this, and
so Wild Wild West. Links down below in the show notes. Stay tuned after the end credits here, and we'll have a little bit of an interview with Benny.
Yeah, he was terrific, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time,
happy homeschooling!
Hi, Benny. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me. This is my pleasure, and I am thrilled that you guys are doing this. You guys are helping me expand our audience, helping to, if you will, broadcast the revolution. It's not televised, but it's broadcast. It's kickstarted too.
We're going to kickstart the revolution.
That's right. So give us some background on you. You're a game designer. So tell us about what that's like, and your history designing games, and a little bit about yourself.
So I've been a game designer unintentionally since 2008. We were living with roommates of ours, or I had roommates that we ended up living with them at some point, but they were neighbors across the street, and he was a graphic designer, and he said to me at one point, well, we could design a game. And I said, why would we do that? And he said, I don't know. Why not? I said, oh, okay. So it basically, we ended up forming a game company. For a couple of years after that, we published 4 games ourselves. Nothing's really in print. It was small print runs. We manufactured them in the basement of the house we were renting. We had this giant printer, and we would cut the cards ourselves and packaged everything. It was quite an experience. This is well before Kickstarter, of course. And so that all ended. My wife and I ended up moving out here to Texas, and so we've been here 11 years. And so the game design bug never left me. I still, tinkered with ideas and this, that, and the other. Ended up, I've just made a lot of very good friends over the years. I'll just say that. Published a game called Yakitori with our friend Chris Urinko with his Daft Concepts. They're primarily a laser cutting. They manufacture like game components and things like that. They do some different things. So they did Yakitori for me. It was the idea came about of actually creating tiles that you could skewer, right, with a wooden skewer. So it worked well. We had a good, very successful Kickstarter with that. I did a couple games with Jason Tagmeyer with Button Shy. And so then Roll and Rights kind of came along around about 2017. So this would have been Roll and Rights really were not at the time my speed. I'd played.
Maybe describe a roll and write for the people who maybe don't know what those are.
So roll and write involves typically a game sheet per player. Sometimes there's a shared game sheet as well. And then there's some sort of randomizer that's included to then generate an input that the players would then fill in on their sheet, which maybe then creates some other interesting things, right? So I played a couple, and I actually ended up making one as a goof for Sue Sheldon. Some of your audience may know Sue's. She does Dice Tower stuff. Sue's is probably the biggest fan of roll and writes on the planet. I'm sure she has literally everything that's been designed, and she's been a good friend to me over the years. We've talked, we've hung out, we've had different times at BGG Con and stuff. So I'd done this game because Suze loves pie and she loves roll and writes, and so I did this Warful Pie. It's Pie the dice game, basically, right? And it was a goof, and it was haha, let's do one. And I sent it to Suze, and I shared it around on the internet. Never really decided at that moment this was going to be the thing, right? And then Derik ended up reaching out to me after that, and I'd done a couple more. I'd done one about giant monsters destroying a city, and by the time Derik got a hold of me, we started chit-chatting about Warful Pie and Wreck and Roll. That's the one with the monsters. And so he was like, we should do more of these. I'm like, I don't know, maybe. And of course, as things go, creativity just seems to happen for me. I'm very blessed that way. Mm-hmm. I think most things are at least somewhat inspiring to me. So I happened to be sitting at the table. This was probably 2018, early 2018 by then. I was thinking about an interview that Stefan Feld had given about dice and how he loved the idea of six-sided dice and how the way they seemed to dance across the table when they were rolled. They were almost like they were alive, right? Like, mm-hmm. I don't know why I was sitting there thinking about this. So I was thinking about the number 6. And while I was thinking about the number 6, I started to, well, what could you do with the number 6? And then consequently, the game we're talking about, Wild Wild West, popped out of that. Mm-hmm. The idea of the central 6 mechanism, basically the center wheel, where it was an action selection. And so I was like, oh, cool. Okay. So if you rolled a dice, you could get into one of 6 areas. And I was like, all right, well, if you get in the areas, what are you going to do in the areas? And so I was like, okay, well, the theme for having a Western game was always there. Like that was basically the crux. I mean, in my head, I saw the wheel, the revolver wheel. I was like, that is the game. That's the game. And you do stuff in these 6 areas, right? And so it went through a lot of people. A lot of people have had their hands on Wild Wild West, have seen it, played it, developed it. Derik especially has had huge input in developing it. When we finally got around to doing the Kickstarter, we've been talking about doing games since 2018. And it was the pandemic had hit, and we were kind of just stuck with the idea of, well, what do we want to do? I was like, we'd talked about if we did games, which ones would we do to publish? How would we do it? Would we manufacture them? Would we have somebody else do it? Somewhere along the lines. And there was a company that came out with a print and play of a roll and write they'd done. This was, I'm going to mess up the name of the game because I don't remember what it was. It was something about the throne. It was a Spanish company that done it, and they released it for €3, right? Like it was a Kickstarter, €3. You get the game, you print it at home, and Derik and I watched this thing just explode, and it was just like, holy cow! Like, wait, that's viable. This is an option, right? And like the concept of print and play was always something that I had known about. Way back when. There was always folks going, hey, you want to try my game? Cool. Here's the files printed at home. I'm not big enough to have a manufacturing setup or anything yet, but here, try this game on. There were all these different games I played over the years that were print and plays. I was like, oh yeah, this is great. Like, this is so fun.
I mean, Board Game Geek is like littered with them all over the place.
Yeah.
I remember, like, didn't they have the idea of like a wallet game for, like, I had the zombie wallet game.
For a little while. Yeah, you got really into all of these games that we could print components and then take meeples and dice and other things. And
like, I got, like, because guys always have wallets, I was always interested in that, like a game that I could hold in my wallet. So like if I got stuck somewhere, I could just pull it out and play. And it was like a zombie game or something. I always had it in there. I had like a little like paperclip holding it together. So yeah, you're absolutely
for
right.
years
Yeah,
you walked around with that in your wallet.
yeah.
I don't think we ever played it when we
Well,
were waiting for anything.
I played it with a couple times, but like because it was a solo game. And that was
that's
great
right.
about it. Yeah, you could just play it alone if you didn't have anything.
I think that's great. So obviously, print and plays are great. If you don't have to deal with manufacturing and all those upfront costs and tooling and all the business of manufacturing. But the other thing about print and plays, right, we were talking a little bit before this, is how accessible they are. Is that something that really came into your mind when you and Derik, and we're talking about Derik Duley, by the way, just for our audience that might not know, who's
Derik
kind
Duley,
of your co-creator, co-partner, I don't know, of Roll and Write Revolution?
He is in so many ways, Derik is my sounding board. He gets just the most raw, unfiltered nonsense out of me. I'm gonna like babble here for a second, but I hope it's coming across. In my life, I am so incredibly blessed. I have just amazing family. I have a great wife. I've got so many great friends that I've made over the years in gaming. And it was one of those things where when we moved to Texas, I felt lost. I was so lost. I was like, what am I going to do with my time? Like, I didn't have a job yet, right? Like I left a cushy job in New York to come here. So I was like, oh, what am I doing? With the game company, my sister was like, well, you got to do social media. I'm like, well, what is social media? This was, back 2010, 2011. You got to do social media. Well, what is social media, right? So then I signed up for Twitter. And through Twitter, I actually have made so many great contacts. I'm just so incredibly blessed. That's where Ryan Sanders, who you all, I think we talked about briefly in the open before we got
founder of the Game School Co-op.
Yep.
Ryan
he is so fun. Ryan has always been one of those guys who will come and find me and go, hey, what are you doing? I'd be like, oh, man, nothing. He's like, well, why don't you do reviews on my site? That's where we did Rolling with Benny. And Rolling with Benny was exclusively roll and writes. So I reviewed as many roll and writes as I get my hands on. So this is actually where the print and play idea really came from. Was I ran out of printed games that I could get my hands on. So I was like ordering games from Germany and Japan, anywhere I could find games to review. I was ordering them, right? And I actually ran out of games to review. This was, it was like, what in the world? I couldn't review my own games because that would be silly. I'd be like, oh yeah, this game's 10 out of 10. You should play it. It's great. At that point, though, I didn't have any manufacturing setup or anything. So I was like, oh, well, it's 10 out of 10, but nobody can have it. And so I started to really get into print and plays. Torpedo Dice was one of them that was a big one for me. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I really started to see print and plays as a viable option. And so Derik and I have been kicking this back and forth. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then when the Spanish company blew up, by then we were talking pretty closely with Odin Pong. He was the guy that ran Inkwell. They did that big 10-pack of games, the roll and write games. So it was, you kickstarted it and you got the book of 10 games, which was great because then you could find your own components. Everybody's got dice and whatever else, right? So why would I pay $30 to get more dice that I don't need? I've already got dice and I've got plenty of pens and markers and etc. But I can print out a sheet for like, the cost of ink and paper, which is high right now, but usually it's pretty cheap, right? Ryan had approached me he was doing, he goes, I'm doing this game schooling thing and it'd be really cool for you to give me a game that I can put on a website that people can download for free. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. I had created this game and he actually gave me the name for it. Fortunately, good friends have given me names for games all along. And so he came up with Roll Star. And it's this game. It uses dice and it uses a deck of playing cards, right? And so the playing cards are the audience so you're basically the setup is you're learning how to play the guitar. And so you roll dice to fill in scales and chords, right? And so the more chords you have and the more scales you filled in, the greater audience you can play to. So the more cards you can when you flip out cards, the more you can it's a push your luck with the audience. Like, oh, hey, I can play to, 20 people. And so you flip cards until you get to 20. It's, oh, okay, yeah, cool, score. So I gave it to Ryan as, something that would be really fun because it incorporated two of the things that he and I both really enjoy. And that's roll and writes, of course, but also having a shared experience that you can use to teach with. Right. And so Ryan and I over the years, of course, especially with the game schooling thing, have talked about what could you do with these games. And so when I was doing the Rolling with Benny reviews, a lot of stuff towards the end was rough ideas for lesson plans. Like, oh, hey, you could use Wild Wild West, for example. You could use it as part of a lesson plan around, you'd say, just Western town. Like, what was it like in a boom town, or what was,
that
things
was our
like
thought
that.
too.
Yeah.
We were thinking the same thing when we played it. Like, this is beyond something like Great Western Trail, which is, first of all, extremely complex and very expensive too. That's a big get to buy something like that. This would be such an affordable and easy to pick up thing that you could do. I mean, somebody could even buy enough copies to do this in a classroom setting, right? There's not any interaction between players. So you really could have as many players as you want, but a great way to kind of reinforce some of the common themes in studying Western towns. And so it would really work well for that.
It also really kind of taps in the idea of having to manage disasters. It's
so
the notion
we call them
that
calamities, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, we always teach to everybody that these are calamities that will befall your town. I don't know why, but we just decided they needed to be called calamities. I think this is one of the interesting things about print and plays for me is for us, we don't house rule games very often.
No.
We don't change rules on games. We just don't. I don't know. I guess we don't feel like empowered to do that. For some reason, with the print and play, it feels so accessible that we kind of feel like we have ownership on the game.
You
like,
kind of make it your own in some
respect.
respects.
Sometimes we're like, oh, we're going to call it calamities, and oh, we're going to make it then when this happens, this other thing happens, and that makes it more educational. For some reason, we have this feeling like we have more license to be more creative with it, which I'm not sure if anyone else has told you that, but we feel that way. And surprising, we don't feel that way about the other games that we purchased that are already set for you. There's something in it that sparks our own creativity, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, no, I love that idea. One of the things that we encountered with the very first Kickstarter when we did Standing Stones was we had one of the backers actually, I think the campaign had ended because he had gotten the files, and he actually sent us his version of the Standing Stones cards. And so he like fan made all these cards, like really fun, great. I'll have to send you guys a copy. Just like out of the blue, and Derik and I are kind of like, messaging back and forth, like, holy cow, like somebody likes our game well enough to make their own cards for it. And how cool is that? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And with y'all, and it's like, I love that it allows people the opportunity to go, hey, I made this at home, and here's the things that I thought were cool, and here's some of the little things I'm going to tweak, and this is what I call this, and this is this. And I'm like, absolutely. I love that. For me, it's, I don't want to dictate to people how they should play my games. I want them to have the experience of the game and go, okay, that was cool. And then maybe it's going to inspire somebody to, create something else, or create their own thing, create their own roll and writes, or create their own print and plays. I mean, I would love that. I'd love for somebody to like, shoot back a message, be like, hey, you inspired me to make a game. And I'd be like, oh, that's amazing. Send me a copy. I want to play it. Right.
Yeah. Like, I think it's like the general, like, I don't know, just that community and encouragement aspect, I think is really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about maybe one of the two games, the Wild Wild West. Let's just talk a little bit about like, what goes into making a game? What considerations do you make? How do you like tweak rules? Like get into the, maybe a little bit into the weeds on, going from basically your vision and then the cycling back and forth. And you had mentioned that you had some feedback and you had some iterations. What does that process look like? How long does that take? And then also, how do you do all the wonderful graphics? That's I think that's what really stood out to me for that game, is that just aesthetically it's very very good to look at.
So I'm not going to take any credit for the graphics. I'm going to give a shout out to my buddy Mr. Noby's Cabin. That's his BGG handle. We call him Noby. He is our graphic designer extraordinaire. A lot of it was me going to Derik, hey, I made a game. Derik going, okay, what's it about? I'm like, well, it's a Western game. And so I think by the time I sent it to Derik, I had the wheel and I had all of the activities, if you will. So, like the areas of town were all set. So there was the varmints, and there was the judge and the train and all that kind of stuff. And so Derik played it. We played it a bunch back and forth. And he goes, it needs some teeth. I said, yeah, it needs teeth. He goes, well, I don't know, figure it out. And so we kind of bantered back and forth about what that looked like. And then the calamities, as you guys call them, I think it's great, kind of emerged out of that, where at some point there was going to be a trigger for an event that actually affected a different part of town. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, okay, well, I'm almost done filling up the saloon and it doesn't matter if the saloon goes away. But it's like, oh no, I filled up the saloon and now that's going to affect a different area of town that I really need to not have affected.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's one of my
It's
favorite parts of the game, honestly. I really
that
like.
Was such a great dynamic you added to it.
It goes in different way, and we've each kind of developed our strategies. Matt's very big into getting the capturing and jailing all the criminals. That's his big thing.
Yeah.
And I'm really into maxing out the varmint so that
kind of
calamity track doesn't affect anything.
Yeah, it's my love for Kurt Russell and Tombstone.
Yeah. No, it's funny though, because we've played this a number of times. We played this with our game group. We played this with your mom.
Yes.
Grandma loves gaming, so we played with her.
Nice.
We played it a couple of times ourselves, and we're really developing a strategy. But the more that I play it, the more that I'm like figuring out. You can see how clever it is kind of on the surface, but the more you play it, the more I'm like, this was really well thought out. And we kind of always wonder about this as we play so many games. Like, do you start with the math and going, okay, how do you make sure it's like balanced? It's not overpowered.
The balancing question is a good one.
Yeah. How does that happen?
So that is what we call mathing out a game. So for me, I always like to start thematically with some random idea. And of course, with that one, it was a Western idea. But it was, okay, if this is, and so with that game in particular, with developing the math part of it, I went through each particular area of, okay, let's target, I think it was right around 30 points. Like, let's see if we can get around 30 points out of each area. And then, kind of fluctuated as we went. But a lot of it was making sure that each area could score approximately the same as a different area, so that like Matt, you go after the jailing the criminals, which I think is a really, really fun way to go. And I love how those two areas interplay with each other, because you cannot separate the two areas. You have to work on both. And then Ariel, as you said, like going after the varmints is a really another like very fun idea. But it's like, all right, so these two have to kind of Matt, your two have to work together.
Yeah.
But also generate enough points that those two combined can match up with, say, the varmints and the cattle, right? Or the saloon and the train. Like, can there be enough points? Can you, and that's where it's like, how far do you push your points? And so I always try to start with very, very, very basic math. I always go with 1. Okay, you get 1 point for doing this thing. And then if 1 point doesn't work out, then it goes, okay, well, how about 2 points? And it's always somewhere between like 1 and 5 is my target range. I don't want to try to like, fry people's brain with like math. Like, oh no, you're over 6,000 victory points now. Like, okay, that's kind of a lot.
It's not dealing rubles.
No,
yeah, right. I mean, it almost feels like whose line is it anyway? Like the points are made up and it doesn't matter anyway. Like,
yeah,
right. As long as we had fun, it's fine. But so I go simple math. I mean, and so math for me is the part of game design that I have a love-hate relationship with. I'm currently working on a game. Derik is working on the development end. It's actually a game that came together really, really fast. Had been an idea in my head for a long time, and I finally came up with, oh, that's how the game's supposed to work. It'd been cooked, on the back burner for about a year, trying to like, okay, this is going to make sense eventually. And then it did, and it came together probably last 3 or 4 weeks. And a lot of it was just sitting and mathing and going, okay, is the math close? Yes, math is sort of close. Okay. And if it was like, if you nudged one area, would that throw off all the math?
That's what I would think would happen.
It did.
Right?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
it was
I can imagine.
Awful. So
if you're trying to get closer, you could end up further away at the end.
That's how Wild Wild West went for a long time. Like in its infancy, that game really had a lot of, because with all the 6 areas trying to work against each other, and then the 2 areas that work together, so the 4 that worked against those, and it's like you would nudge math one way, and then it'd be like, okay, no, slide it back a little bit. Okay, oh, we're at 0.5. No, 0.5. Okay, let's everybody regroup, right? And so it's me sitting with a calculator, me sitting with a pad of paper, and just jotting out the figures, like, okay, this area I can make this many points and this many points, and okay, now if I do all of these things, and the calamities are going to screw up this area and this area. Okay, so those are gone. So now I can have this many points approximately. And so a lot of it is trying to, I don't ever want to make a game where somebody feels like they're completely blown out of the water.
Yeah.
And every once in a while that does happen. Certainly there's the Matt Riddle, the Ridback boys. He's very, very quick to say, we'll play better. I'm always the one to go, yeah, Matt, but you see, first impressions are a big thing. It's kind of important for me to have a good first impression, especially with print and play that they've spent their hard-earned $3 on and their hard-earned boss's money to print out at work.
Hey, I laminated it myself.
Yeah, we laminated ours.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's brilliant. That's one of the tricks that Susan I'd always banged on about was, you get a game, laminate one of the sheets, because at some point you run out of sheets and the company may not exist anymore, and then you have to get sheets again.
Right?
No, seriously, it's happened. But especially with print plays, I love that people laminate them. I think that's the best thing ever. Yeah. And get some really good markers, like those Statler markers. Those are so good.
So we steal the markers from the silver and gold roll.
Yeah, silver and gold's got going. We also we love Expo wet erase. Because the problem we've had sometimes with dry erase is that we move our hand across it and then it's like, oh, I don't remember.
Yeah. Was that a 3 or was that a 9? I'm going to give myself a 9.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, we also played another game, which was the dice trucking.
Yeah. Dice trucking is currently on Kickstarter. Dice trucking is a really, really fun game so Derik actually made that one.
Yeah. Did you have any role in it at all? But I mean, at all. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that was, so Derik got inspired by playing my silly games, and he made Ancient Artifacts. That was his roll and write that was actually boxed, manufactured, etc. And so when we were really talking about games, one of the big things I always said to him, and I said to Odin, was, I don't want inventory. I don't want that. If we can do print and plays, awesome. If we can do print on demand, even better. Because then that way folks can get the game at a way that's accessible.
Yeah, that to me is a mark of quality, is that it costs something. It's not just free.
I mean, the dice trucking alone, I mean, it's I didn't the Wild Wild West is really involved, but it's once you play it once or twice, it gets really smooth. Like we played the dice trucking one, and I was amazed at what was packed into
a single
sheet of paper.
Yeah, it's amazing how much he's got it. It's one of those. There's so much that the dice do. They're the components. They're the flight. They're the dealing with raiders. They're the avoiding the incoming meteors and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was a game that Derek and I had, he's like, hey, I got an idea for a game. I'm like, okay. And so he told me about it. And there were probably some, hand-drawn um, sheets of dice trucking way back when. And it really became a game that was very, very fun. And it was like, wow, like how, like, dude, you've got a lot going on here. And one of the things that's deceptive with that game, you have this really great area for your ship, like this big area, and then you have this tiny little map up at the top, and it's like, wow, like, okay. But when you start playing it, like, that map really becomes in your head much bigger and much more involved, because it's like, holy cow, what's coming at me next, right? Like,
well, it's wild. It's not only a dice game and a building game, but it's also a labyrinth game, and it's all packed into one thing.
It's interesting how you're using a game to highlight something that's, an area that maybe people don't know about. And it's a neat platform to do that with. So obviously you love roll and writes, because you've done a lot of them. Is that your favorite game mechanic? Is that the one that, makes you most excited to play of all the game mechanics that, of games you played?
Well, so with Roll and Write Revolution, the big push has always been, roll and writes are cool, but how can we evolve them? How can we push them into bigger, better spaces? What else can we throw at a roll and write and still have it be mostly a roll and write, but also be something bigger, better, different? So like with Standing Stones, it's a domino-driven roll and write, where the dominoes are the action selection mechanism and a blind bid. Like, all right, that's different. And then we did Illusions of Prestige as the follow-up campaign. That was in March. And so with my social media feed, I tried to spotlight, I think every week or so of that campaign, I really pushed for, let's spotlight. So Illusions of Prestige is a trick-taking game about players being magicians, and they're trying to come up with these great components. Even if they don't win the trick, they get components towards a power. So they're filling in components of an illusion that they're going to then create to affect the game in some way. And so even though you could actually lose every single hand, with your illusions, you could theoretically pull off a win in the right circumstances, right? So it's not so much bad stuff. It's, I'm no good at playing trick-taking games, but I could still do well, right?
Oh, this is a game for me because I'm terrible at trick-taking games.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it really is. Like, I mean, Matt's gonna go, oh yeah, I'm gonna win every trick, and he's gonna be throwing out all the cards, and you're gonna be like, well, yeah, but check out these illusions. Boom. Like, how did you? Okay, wait a minute. And so with that game, I really wanted to spotlight what it was like for the unseen voices, if you will, of magic. So there was so many great African American magicians from the turn of the century on. The guys like Potter, several others. I'm drawing a blank because I did all my research back then, and then it's been 3 months since then. I haven't had to do research on it. But so there were a lot of magicians that went that path and did well on the carnival scene, and did well with all those different things. And for me, it was a way to say, hey, there's really valuable history here, and this isn't something that's talked about. And we felt like it was a good time to do that, because it helped to spotlight, this is an important thing that maybe American history could catch up with. And even a great teaching thing, because you can play the trick-taking game and you can say, oh, well, hey, it has and on the player sheet is actually an African American magician who's like, he's kind of doing this kind of grandiose thing with his cape. And it spotlighted that there's an opportunity to learn more, and that's where a lot of times, like with these games, I'm trying to help folks explore more of the world, right? And I want people to see that there's more of the world out there that we don't hear about, or we don't learn about in our typical history or typical means of learning. But then also I like to do frivolity. I like to have fun. Roll and writes, to answer your question in the roundabout way, I'm coming back to it, I promise. In the end, when it comes to designing games, I'm lazy and I don't like to have to go find components. So I design roll and writes because I don't want to find cubes. It's the honest answer. I like them mechanically. I really do. But I'm also very lazy and don't want to try to find I have a box of cubes somewhere, and I'm just like, you know what? I don't need cubes anymore. I can just mark. I can draw boxes and turn them into cows, and then draw cows on the sheet, and then mark out the cows, and there you go. Circle, cross it out. There it is. And I didn't have to have a cube for it, right? Like, I mean, there's so many people like, oh, cubes are great. I'm like, yeah, cubes are great if you can find them. I've got little 2-year-olds that are about to be 3 who love game components, and they're like, Dada, I want to play dice. Okay.
Yeah, that's funny. We just played GTFO, the planet.
Oh yeah.
And we
nice.
actually, I mean, it's a solo, but we both played a sheet because, again, why not?
Yeah.
And they did the same thing with money, where you were, checking off different like little dots, or circling areas, and then you would cross those off later and circle new areas. They just gave you plenty of room to do the adding and subtracting, where a lot of games would just said, oh, we'll just take 2 cubes from the bank, and now you give cubes back. But instead you had to really look and do it all on paper. And I thought it was really an interesting way to do it. You could just use this one sheet of paper and this set of however many dice and do all of these different things that other games have to use so many more components to accomplish. Made them very travel friendly, first of all.
Yeah.
But it's
accessible too, right? And
yeah. Yeah. Anyone
like we
can
talk
play.
about, I'm lazy because I don't want to go find my cubes, but how many people in the world have a huge bucket of cubes at their disposal? Probably not very many. And so if I'm going to throw them a print and play, and oh yeah, here's a print and play, and go find 100 cubes and 40 different pawns and a stack of minis, like it's not going to happen, right? Like,
right.
I'd rather make it very accessible. Okay, grab some dice, and if it's components outside of, say, dice or dominoes or a handful of little like tokens or whatever, I will always try to include those as a printable with the games. So like Illusions is a 54 card deck, but you get the full 54 card deck. But each card is unique to the game itself. And then I included a sheet of tokens so that folks could then print out the tokens they needed for the game. Like, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, hey, go find 12 cubes to play this game. Oh, here's what you need. Go ahead and print it out. It'll be fine. The game the one I was talking about, I'm really having the math very hard on lately. The new one, it uses standees, right? And so I really enjoy the process of creating these little like weird. I don't know. I've got a game somewhere in the pipeline called Goat Expectations. It's about goats, and so the player markers are little goat standees, and so it's like, with the whole package thing, I think there's like 14 or something like that little goat standees of different like flavors. So there's like one of colors, and then there's like one of all kinds of different patterns. I really try to make it accessible so that folks can play it and feel like they're getting good quality components with their $3 game. Like, I can't give you minis. I can't give you the printout for a 3D printer because most people, I don't have a 3D. I mean, who has a 3D printer? Not very many people.
No.
Most people have a home printer. And if I can give you a layout and show you how to cut it out in a certain way and cut the little tabs and fold it in just such a way that you have this little standee that stands up, and it becomes part of the game, and it becomes part of the experience. And so this other game, it's a train game, and you have 2 standees that you stand up when you gain them and knock them over when they are used. One is a conductor and one's an engineer, right? Helpful for trains. So I did art on the front of the standees, and when you turn the standees around, you can actually get kind of little crib notes as what they do. Like the engineer will change value, the conductor lets you re-roll. And so it's like, oh hey, oh yeah, that's what he does. Cool. All right, I'm gonna knock him over and do this bonus action. Like, hey, that's pretty smart. I try to look for ways to make the games feel very, I don't want to say like more than they are, because it's a sheet of paper and some dice do you have at home, but it's I want them to have an experience, and I want them to feel like the theme matters. When I design, I go theme first. I want that theme. I want that story. I want somebody to play the game, and then like what you guys are talking about with Wild Wild West, or with dice trucking, being able at the end of the game to say, "Holy cow, here's what happened." And with Wild Wild West, when I originally was sending it out to folks, I made sure to include, "Oh, hey, tag me on social media and tell me what happened to your town. What was your town's name, and what kind of nonsense happened in your town? Did you have any successes? Were you good at capturing bandits? Awesome. Tell me that." Because I want folks to feel like there's a story, right? And like each game is a story.
I'm waiting for the roll and write legacy game, you guys, because that's my big issue with games that are legacy. And I think it's great that you have the special story and you have destroy game components or it changes forever and all that stuff. But you spent $40 or $50 on this game, and then you will never be able to play it again. And I would love the idea of a legacy
roll and write, like a D&D where it changes, where the rules and the game board changes, so the next time you play it, it's
not
different.
D&D exactly, but yeah, there's whatever you did in this game has an effect on the next game. So,
but you can always restart it.
Like whether like when you initially build, your terrain or your ship or whatever it is, maybe you do that in pen, so that's set forever, whereas everything else is in pencil. I don't know, just like something that.
So some legacy aspect, that'd be kind of cool.
Right. You laminate it and you use permanent marker on that part of it. And then the rest of it, but you could still always print it and do it again another time. But I'd love that changing story dynamic, just to give you an idea, and Derik to kick around.
Well, so, I mean, this is where I have to like whisper like, "Hey, Derik, they want that game that we've been sitting on for a while." And
well, that's the thing, cool. Right? How many games? How many games do you have in the closet there? You said there was
41 in the vault.
In the vault.
There's 41 in the vault.
That's a lot of content.
That's not counting the 4 that have been released. So we actually have a legacy game. It's maybe called Pineapple. So a lot of these games get like these weird, goofy, like Project XYZ, whatever it is related to the theme. Like Wild Wild West was always Wild Wild West, and like in our conversations, it's WWW. A lot of them get like these kind of abbreviated titles, and Pineapple was Project Pineapple, like originally, and it just became Pineapple. And so Pineapple is this game about Hawaii, and it tells the story of the impact of industrialization on Hawaii, basically.
Interesting.
And it's a legacy game where the players are creating a village on their island sheet, and over several games they're adding things to their culture, right? And so it kind of goes through what it was like for them to experience an influx of weird culture that they didn't really want or need, and it was like, oh, hey, now we're leaning into technology, and we're losing certain aspects of our original culture, right? And so it's a very, very fun game. I don't know where it's at in development. Derik's going to be like, "Dude, stop talking. Shh, quiet." I gave Pineapple to him a long time ago, and he absolutely loves Pineapple. It's probably one of his favorites that I've ever designed. And I know he really does want to do that game justice and really does want to get it out to the people. So, I mean, there's definitely going to be more legacy roll and writes. I'm absolutely certain of it. I think for us, we're looking at what are some other ways to kind of push boundaries. I've got a deck building roll and write.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's a 54 card deck, right? So it's not, 54 card deck is pushing it. It's 6 pages of printed cards you have to cut and sleeve, and I'm so sorry. But it's a game where your focus isn't always about deck building. Like there's definitely a deck building component. You're definitely using cards to drive action. But your sheet is a lot of engine building. And then you're working on a map together with the other players. It's called Pipe Fitters. It's a game about basically providing water to all of these different buildings throughout this town. And so you're playing competitively, but the map you're sort of playing cooperatively because you can extend somebody else's pipe. And when that pipe does get to wherever it's supposed to go, whoever's on that pipeline is getting credit for what they put there, right? So it's like, oh, hey, you helped me get this pipe there. Oh, and you get some, okay, you got points for it. You're cool. Good job. Right. There's no disasters in that game. It's a pretty slick little game. And so it's one that it's on BGG. Not all the files are up there, but I did set it up so that if folks did want to try to make their own maps, all of that's on there. So they can jump on there and do some fan created content, hoping, please, higher powers, let's get this happening. I'm not sure when that's coming out, but that's definitely in the works.
So you've talked about a few different games you have kind of in the pipeline. So as we kind of wrap things up, we don't want to have you stay up too late. What's the sequence of releases that you guys are thinking for Roll and Write Revolution that people can kind of keep their eye on Kickstarter? Is it going to be every few months? Are you thinking? Is that the goal? Or
so, I mean, the goal is probably one every other month is comfortable for us. Because that gives us time to develop. It gives us time to do art, work with Novi if he's involved with one of them. I think the next one we're really looking at is this train game. It's called Train in Vain. It's like after the Clash song, and it's a game where you're not having to place your tracks so they make sense. Like you can place them anywhere you want on the map as long as it's legal for your train, right? And you're evolving trains, and it's this really. It's such a fun game. It came together so well. I'm really just very, very proud of it. But it works kind of in certain ways like Wild Wild West, where you have a player who's rolling 2 dice. Everybody has 2 dice, but they match the values of the dice that were rolled, right? So if Joe rolls a 2 and a 1, everybody sets their dice to 2 and 1. And then you're doing actions on your sheet. So there's not a ton of interaction that way. But you can affect your own dice. That's where the conductor and the engineer come in, right? Like you can re-roll one. Okay, I'm going to re-roll these dice. 2 and 1 are terrible for me. And so it's come together very nicely. Derik's got his finger on the development pulse with that one, and definitely, I'm very happy with it. It's one that I did not expect it to come together quickly, and we're actually working on the Kickstarter page right now. And I'm going to do a video for it tomorrow. So hopefully it'll be out soon in the Kickstarter realms, because we got to kickstart the revolution some more.
We'll make sure to link your Twitter handle. I think you do all your promotions there. We'll also link the previous Kickstarter campaigns if people want to get the printables as well. Is there a website also that they can go to, or is that pretty much the place to go?
That's pretty much the place to go. If they go on the gamecrafter.com, you can actually buy printed versions of our games. You can get the pad of game sheets and any of the other printable components. So like standing stones, not everybody has dominoes. Mm-hmm. And so you can get, I think you can order the printed components or the print and play through them. I think they're $4. We couldn't change the price on it. I'm sorry, everybody. We tried. Go for Kickstarter. It's $3. Yeah, Kickstarter.
Yeah.
No, GameCraft
early buy adopter. Early adopter right? Credit.
But GameCraft has been really, really good for us, and they do amazing work. Okay. Illusions is up there. If folks don't want to print the deck, it's on there. You can get it. I think it's like $10 or something, plus shipping, of course, tax, all that. But you get just an absolutely, like, I have a copy of it. It's stunning. I'm like, holy cow! I made that. That's amazing. Like, I'm not very good.
Good to know about GameCrafter too, for anyone who is having kids make their own games and wants to have it professionally printed. So that's a good note. We'll put that in there too. Well, we don't want to keep you up any later. I know that it's late where you are in Texas. So thank you so much, Benny, for joining us. This has been just a fun conversation. We really enjoyed getting into the details of designing games, and especially games we really enjoy. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much. And, shout out to your audience, and hopefully they, see this as the beginnings of something bigger for them. I in my life, I've wanted to always do things that felt good and made me feel good and helped other people. So blessed. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.